the rest stop. I stopped at a frozen rest area at 2 a.m. and something followed me back to my truck, something that never left footprints going away. I've been hauling freight across the country for about 8 years now. This happened to me last winter in Wyoming. I was driving a late-night route from Cheyenne to Casper. It was one of those nights where the temperature had dropped to something like -15 degrees. The kind of cold that makes your truck groan and creak even when you're sitting still. I remember my breath was fogging up the windshield every few minutes, and I had to keep wiping it down with my sleeve. The load I was carrying wasn't anything special, just auto parts for a dealership up north. Easy money, straightforward route. I'd driven it probably 20 times before without any issues. It was around 2 a.m. when I started getting really tired. I'd been on the road for maybe 6 hours at that point, and my eyes were starting to burn. I knew I needed to pull over soon, or I'd be a danger to myself and anyone else on the road. The problem was that this stretch of highway didn't have many rest stops, just empty road and darkness in every direction. Finally, I saw a sign for a rest area coming up in about 5 miles. Thank God, I thought. I could pull in, catch maybe an hour of sleep, and then finish the drive. I'd done it 100 times before. When I pulled into the rest area, I noticed something immediately. There were no other vehicles. Usually, even at 2 a.m., there's at least 1 or 2 other trucks parked there. Drivers catching sleep, killing time, whatever. But this place was completely empty. The parking lot was covered in a thin layer of ice and snow. My headlights reflected off it in this weird way that made everything look almost blue. There were 2 bathroom buildings on either side of the lot, and a few picnic tables that were completely buried in snow. I backed the truck into a spot and turned off the engine. The silence was immediate and total. No wind, no other vehicles, nothing. Just that awful quiet you get in the middle of nowhere during winter. I decided I'd use the bathroom before trying to sleep. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box and stepped out into the cold. The air hit me like a punch to the chest. It was so cold it actually hurt to breathe. I made my way to the men's bathroom, my boots crunching on the ice. The door was one of those heavy metal ones, and it was partially frozen shut. I had to really yank on it to get it open. Inside, the bathroom was dark, except for one flickering fluorescent light at the far end. I could see my breath in front of me, even inside the building. The place was freezing. I did my business quickly, eager to get back to my truck. That's when I heard it, a sort of scraping sound coming from one of the stalls, like something being dragged across concrete. I froze. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed off the tile walls. Nothing, just that scraping sound again, slower this time. I should have left right then, but for some stupid reason, I walked toward the sound. Maybe I thought someone needed help. Maybe I was just too tired to think straight. The scraping was coming from the last stall. The door was closed, but I could see shadows moving underneath it in the gap between the door and the floor. "Hey, you all right in there?" I asked. The scraping stopped immediately. I waited for maybe 10 seconds. Then I heard a different sound. Breathing. Heavy, labored breathing like someone who'd just run a marathon. "I'm gonna go get help if you need it," I said, backing away slowly. That's when the stall door slammed open so hard it bounced off the wall. The stall was empty. I'm not joking. There was nothing in there. No person, no animal. Nothing that could have made that sound or opened that door. The toilet, the walls, everything was covered in a thin layer of frost. I didn't wait around to figure it out. I turned and ran out of that bathroom faster than I've ever moved in my life. The cold air hit me again, but I barely noticed. I just needed to get back to my truck. I was maybe 20 feet from my semi when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were footprints in the snow, fresh ones, leading from the woods behind the rest stop to my truck, and they circled around my vehicle, multiple times, like someone had been walking around it while I was in the bathroom. But here's the thing that really got me. The prints didn't lead away. They just stopped at the driver's side door of my truck. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, staring at those prints. My truck was maybe 15 feet away, but it might as well have been a mile. I had to get in there. I had to leave this place. I pulled out my keys and hit the unlock button. The lights flashed, and the horn beeped twice. In the silence of that rest stop, it sounded like an explosion. Nothing moved. No one came running. The footprints just sat there in the snow, ending at my door. I ran to the truck and yanked the door open. I practically threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut behind me. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition. That's when I smelled it. This awful smell like wet dog mixed with something rotten. It was coming from inside the truck. I turned on the overhead light and checked the entire cab. Nothing. The smell was just there, thick and nauseating. I started the engine and threw it in gear. I didn't care about being tired anymore. I just needed to get away from that rest stop. As I was pulling out, I glanced in my rearview mirror. Standing in the middle of the parking lot was a figure. Just standing there, completely still, watching my truck drive away. I couldn't make out any details. It was too dark and too far away, but I could see the general shape of a person. I didn't slow down to get a better look. I drove straight through to Casper without stopping again. The entire time, that smell lingered in my cab. It didn't go away until I pulled into the dealership parking lot just after sunrise. I reported what happened to the highway patrol. They told me they'd send someone to check out the rest stop. They called me back 2 days later and said they didn't find anything unusual. No footprints, no evidence of anyone being there. They suggested maybe I'd been more tired than I thought and my mind was playing tricks on me. Maybe they're right. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know those footprints were real. I've driven that route probably a dozen times since then. I've never stopped at that rest stop again. I'd rather risk falling asleep at the wheel than spend another minute in that place. Sometimes late at night when I'm driving through Wyoming, I think about that figure standing in the parking lot, just watching, waiting. I wonder if it's still there. The thing is, I've tried to rationalize it 100 different ways. Maybe it was just another trucker who needed to stretch their legs. Maybe the bathroom door opened from the wind even though there wasn't any wind that night. Maybe the footprints were mine, and I just didn't remember walking around my truck. But none of that explains the smell, or the breathing I heard in that stall, or the way that figure just stood there in the middle of the parking lot, not moving, not doing anything except watching me leave. I talked to some other drivers about it a few weeks later at a truck stop in Colorado. Tried to bring it up casual, like I was just telling a weird story. Most of them laughed it off. One guy though, this older driver named Marcus, who'd been hauling freight for like 30 years, he got real quiet when I mentioned the Wyoming rest stop. He pulled me aside later and told me he'd heard stories about that place. Said drivers had been reporting strange things there for years. People hearing voices, seeing shadows, finding their trucks move to different parking spots while they were in the bathroom. The company apparently tried to get the state to shut it down at one point, but nothing ever came of it. Marcus told me he stopped there once about 10 years ago. Said he woke up from a nap in his cab to find someone standing right outside his window, just staring in at him. When he turned on his lights, there was nobody there. He never stopped there again either. I don't know if any of that is true. Could just be truckers telling stories to pass the time. But I believe Marcus. There was something in his eyes when he told me that story. The same fear I felt that night. These days I plan my routes to avoid that rest stop entirely. If I'm driving through Wyoming late at night, I make sure I've got enough fuel and energy to push through without stopping. And if I absolutely have to pull over, I wait until I'm at least 50 miles past that place. My wife thinks I'm being ridiculous. She says I worked too hard and my mind was just exhausted that night. Maybe she's right, but she wasn't there. She didn't hear that breathing or see those footprints or smell that awful smell in the truck. Whatever was at that rest stop that night, I don't ever want to find out what it was. Story 2. The Passenger. I came back from a rest stop and found a stranger's phone in my locked truck. Then her mother told me the girl had been missing for 3 days. My name is Derek and I've been driving trucks for about 6 years now. Before that I worked construction, but my back gave out and I needed something that paid decent without destroying my body. Trucking seemed like the perfect fit. This happened to me about 2 years ago in rural Pennsylvania. I was hauling a load of furniture from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. It was supposed to be an easy overnight drive, nothing complicated, just get on the turnpike and cruise straight through. I left Pittsburgh around 9 p.m. The weather was perfect, roads were clear, and I was making good time. I remember thinking this was going to be one of those rare stress-free hauls where everything just goes right. About 2 hours into the drive, I pulled into a rest stop to grab some coffee and use the bathroom. The place was pretty busy for that time of night. Maybe a dozen other trucks parked there, cars coming and going, normal stuff. I went inside, got my coffee, used the facilities, and headed back to my truck. That's when I noticed something sitting on my passenger seat. It was a cell phone, not mine. I keep mine in my pocket at all times, and this one was different. It was one of those newer models with the huge screen. The case was bright pink with little stars on it. I picked it up and looked around the parking lot. Someone must have dropped it, and a good Samaritan put it in my truck thinking it was mine. Except my truck had been locked. I was sure of it. I always lock it. The phone screen lit up when I touched it. No password, just straight to the home screen. There was a text message notification at the top, from someone named Mom. The message said, "Please call me back, sweetie. I'm worried about you." I felt bad for whoever lost this phone. Their mom was obviously concerned. I thought about bringing it inside to the rest stop attendant, but then I figured I'd try calling the mom myself. Maybe she could tell me how to return it. I tapped on the message and hit the call button. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. Sarah, oh thank God, where are you? The woman's voice was frantic. Ma'am, this isn't Sarah. I'm a truck driver and I found this phone in my truck. I'm trying to return it to... She cut me off. What? Who is this? Where's my daughter? I don't know, ma'am. I just found the phone. I'm at a rest stop on the Pennsylvania Turnpike near... The Turnpike? What are you doing with her phone? Where is she? The panic in her voice was making me uncomfortable. Ma'am, I promise I don't know. The phone was just in my truck when I came back from the bathroom. I'm trying to help. There was a long pause. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. Sarah's been missing for 3 days. If you have her phone, that means you know where she is. My stomach dropped. Ma'am, I swear to God I don't know anything about this. The phone was just here. Maybe she dropped it at the rest stop and someone put it in my truck by mistake. I'm calling the police, she said and hung up. I sat there for a minute staring at the phone in my hand. This was bad. This was really bad. Some girl was missing and now I had her phone and no way to prove I didn't do anything. I should have gone straight to the police myself. That would have been the smart thing to do, but I panicked. I thought maybe I could figure out what happened before the cops showed up and started asking questions. I started looking through the phone. The last text message Sarah had sent was 3 days ago, just like her mom said. It was to someone named Jake. The message said, "Meeting up with you at 8. Don't be late this time." There were no messages after that. Nothing. It was like she just stopped using her phone completely. I checked her photos. Most of them were normal stuff, pictures with friends, food, selfies. But then I found something weird. The most recent photo was taken 3 days ago at 7:43 p.m. It was a picture of a truck stop, not the one I was at, a different one. The photo was taken from inside a vehicle looking out at the parking lot. I zoomed in on the image. In the corner of the frame, you could see part of a truck, a big rig. The cab was dark blue with some kind of logo on the side, but I couldn't make it out clearly. My heart was pounding now. I kept scrolling through the photos. A few pictures back, there was another one that caught my eye. It was a selfie of Sarah. She looked young, maybe early 20s. She was smiling, but her eyes looked scared. And behind her in the photo, slightly out of focus, was the inside of a truck cab. Someone else's truck. I felt sick. I looked up from the phone and scanned the parking lot. There were trucks everywhere. Any one of them could be the one from the photo. That's when I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. There was a dark blue truck parked 3 spots away from mine. I couldn't see it clearly because of the angle, but it looked like it had some kind of logo on the side. I sat there frozen, trying to figure out what to do. Should I call the police right now? Should I go check out that truck? Should I just get the hell out of here? Before I could decide, I heard a knock on my passenger window. I jumped so hard I dropped the phone. Standing outside my truck was a guy, maybe in his 50s, wearing a trucker cap and a heavy jacket. He was smiling, but something about it seemed wrong. I rolled down the window just a crack. "Can I help you?" "Hey buddy. I think you got something that belongs to me," he said. His voice was friendly, but his eyes weren't. They were flat and cold. "What are you talking about?" He pointed at the passenger seat. "That phone. My daughter left it in my truck earlier and I've been looking everywhere for it. Must have fallen out when she got dropped off." I glanced at the phone on the seat, then back at him. "Your daughter's name's Sarah?" His smile got wider. Everything in my gut was screaming that this was wrong. If this was really his daughter's phone, why had the mom said she was missing? Why did Sarah look scared in that selfie? "You know what, I actually just talked to her mom," I said. "She's pretty worried. Maybe you should give her a call." Something changed in his expression. The smile disappeared. "Her mom's got nothing to worry about. Just give me the phone. I think I'm going to hold on to it and turn it into the police," I said. "They can sort out who it belongs to." He stared at me for a long moment, then he reached for the door handle. I had locked it after getting back in, thank God. The handle didn't budge. "Open the door," he said. It wasn't a request. I started my engine. "Back away from my truck, or I'm calling 911 right now." He stood there for another few seconds, just staring at me with those dead eyes. Then he smiled again, turned around, and walked toward the dark blue truck. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I threw the truck in gear and pulled out of that rest stop as fast as I could. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. As I merged back onto the turnpike, I grabbed my own phone and called 911. I told them everything. About finding the phone, about the mom saying Sarah was missing, about the guy at the rest stop. The dispatcher kept me on the line for about 10 minutes, asking questions, getting details. She told me to drive straight to the next major police station and wait there for officers. I did exactly that. I drove straight to a state police barracks about 20 miles up the road and pulled in. 2 officers were already waiting for me when I arrived. I handed over the phone and told them everything again. They took my statement, checked my truck, ran my license. The whole process took about 2 hours. One of the officers told me they'd been looking for Sarah for 3 days. She'd gone missing after meeting someone she'd been talking to online. They found her car abandoned at a rest stop, but no sign of her. The officer asked me to describe the man who'd approached my truck. When I mentioned the dark blue truck with the logo, his expression changed. He made a quick phone call, then told me to wait. About an hour later, another officer came in and told me they'd found the truck I'd described. It was still at the rest stop. The driver was being questioned. They didn't tell me much else, just thanked me for coming in and said I was free to go. They'd be in touch if they needed anything else. I left the station as the sun was coming up. I was exhausted, but there was no way I was sleeping. I just wanted to finish this delivery and get home. The police called me 2 days later. They told me they'd found Sarah. She was alive. That's all they'd say. I don't know if it was because of the phone or what happened at the rest stop, but she was alive. I never found out how that phone ended up in my truck. Part of me thinks Sarah put it there somehow, that maybe she was looking for a way to get help and saw an opportunity. Part of me thinks someone else put it there for reasons I don't want to think about. I changed a lot of things after that night. I never leave my truck unlocked, not even for a second. I'm a lot more careful about where I park and who's around me, and I always trust my gut when something feels wrong. Sometimes I think about that guy at the rest stop, about how he smiled at me with those dead eyes, about what might have happened if I'd opened that door. I still drive the Pennsylvania Turnpike pretty regularly. Every time I pass that rest stop, I think about that night. I never stop there anymore. I'd rather drive on fumes than pull into that place again. And sometimes, late at night when I'm on a long haul, I catch myself checking my passenger seat, making sure there's nothing there that shouldn't be. Story 3: The Hitchhiker. I picked up a terrified hitchhiker on a deserted highway, but the people chasing us weren't trying to stop her, they were guiding her. I'm a regional trucker based out of Oregon. I mainly do deliveries up and down the West Coast, nothing too crazy. Been doing this for about 4 years now, and I've got to say, it's been pretty uneventful for the most part. That is, until what happened last September. I was driving south on Highway 101 through Northern California. Beautiful stretch of road if you've never seen it. Ocean on one side, redwood forests on the other. I was hauling lumber down to a distribution center in Eureka. Simple job, good pay, and I was in a pretty good mood. It was around 11 p.m. when I saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder of the road, thumb out, clearly hitchhiking. Now I've got a strict policy about picking up hitchhikers. I don't do it. Ever. Too many horror stories, too much risk. My dad drove trucks for 30 years and he drilled it into my head to never ever pick anyone up. But something about this situation felt different. It was late, it was cold, and we were in the middle of absolute nowhere. The nearest town was probably 20 miles in either direction. And this woman, she looked terrified. I slowed down as I approached her. She was maybe in her 30s, wearing jeans and a light jacket that was way too thin for the weather. Her hair was messed up, and even from my truck I could see she was shaking. I should have kept driving. I know that now, but in the moment, I just couldn't leave her out there. I pulled over about 50 feet past her and put on my hazards. In my mirror, I watched her run toward the truck. She was limping, I noticed. Like she'd hurt her leg or something. She climbed up to the passenger door and I rolled down the window. "Please," she said, and her voice was shaking almost as bad as her hands. "Please, I need help. My car broke down about 5 miles back and my phone's got no signal out here. Can you give me a ride to the next town?" I hesitated. Every instinct my dad ever taught me was telling me to say no and drive away, but she looked genuinely scared. "I don't normally do this," I said, "but okay, just to the next town." The relief on her face was immediate. Thank you so much." She climbed into the passenger seat and I pulled back onto the highway. Up close I could see she had a nasty scrape on her forehead and her jacket was torn at the shoulder. "What happened to you?" I asked. She was quiet for a second, then said, "I ran off the road, hit some gravel on a turn and lost control, went into a ditch. I've been walking for over an hour trying to find help. You should see a doctor," I said. "That cut looks pretty bad." "I'm okay," she said quickly. "I just want to get somewhere with cell service so I can call a tow truck." We drove in silence for a few minutes. I kept glancing over at her. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. She was staring straight ahead, not moving, barely blinking. "What's your name?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Lisa," she said without looking at me. "I'm Tom. Nice to meet you, Lisa. Sorry about your car." She didn't respond, just kept staring straight ahead at the road. Another few minutes passed. The silence was getting uncomfortable. I turned on the radio to fill the dead air. Some classic rock station was playing. That's when Lisa did something weird. She reached over and turned the radio off. "Sorry," she said. "No problem," I said, even though it was kind of rude. "You sure you don't want me to take you to a hospital? You might have a concussion." "I'm fine," she snapped, then softer. "Sorry, I'm just stressed." I decided to drop it. We'd be at the next town in about 15 minutes anyway. I could let her out, she could get her help, and I'd never have to think about this again. But then I noticed something in my side mirror that made my stomach drop. There were headlights behind us. Far back, but definitely there. They'd been there for a while now, I realized, keeping pace with us but maintaining distance. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was a highway. Other cars were allowed to use it too. But then Lisa turned around and looked out the back window. When she turned back around, her face had gone completely white. "Drive faster," she said. "What?" "Drive faster, please." I looked at her, then back at the mirror. The headlights were closer now. Definitely closing the gap. "Who is that?" I asked. She didn't answer. She just kept staring at the mirror, her whole body rigid with tension. "Lisa, who is that? Is someone following you?" "Just drive faster," she said again, her voice barely above a whisper. I pressed down on the gas. The truck picked up speed, pushing past the limit. The headlights fell back a bit, but they were still there. "You need to tell me what's going on," I said. My heart was pounding now. Lisa turned to me and I saw tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do." "What are you talking about?" "They're not going to let me go," she said. "And now they're not going to let you go either." The headlights were getting closer again. Whoever was driving that car was pushing it hard. "Who are they?" I demanded. "Lisa, tell me what's happening right now." She shook her head. "They picked me up 2 days ago. Said they were giving me a ride. But they didn't take me where I asked. They took me to some house in the woods. There were other girls there too." My blood ran cold. "Jesus Christ, we need to call the police." "No signal out here," she said. "I told you. That's why I ran. I waited until one of them was asleep and I just ran. But they must have woken up. They must have come after me. One." I looked in the mirror again. The car was close enough now that I could make out details. It was a dark sedan, looked old. 2 people in the front seat. "How far did you run?" I asked. "Miles," she said. "I don't know exactly, I just kept running until I got to the highway. We were approaching a turn, a sharp one that curved around the edge of a cliff. Ocean on one side, rock face on the other. "Hold on," I said, and I took the turn faster than I should have. When I checked the mirror coming out of the turn, the car was still there, still following. "There's a town coming up in about 10 miles, I said. "There's a police station there, we just need to make it there." Lisa nodded, but she didn't look convinced. We drove in tense silence for a few more minutes. The car behind us wasn't trying to pass or run us off the road. It was just following, waiting. That's when I saw something up ahead that made me swear out loud. Road construction. The highway narrowed down to one lane with concrete barriers on both sides. There was no way around it. I had to slow down. The truck wouldn't fit through at the speed we were going. As soon as I hit the brakes, the car behind us accelerated. It pulled up right behind my trailer, so close I thought it might hit us. We crawled through the construction zone. It felt like it took forever. I kept expecting the car to do something, but it just followed. Finally, we cleared the construction and the road opened up again. I floored it, pushing the truck as hard as it would go. "We're almost there," I said. "Just a few more minutes." Lisa was crying harder now. "They're going to catch us. They always catch us." "No, they're not," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We're going to make it to the police station and this is going to be over." I could see lights ahead now. The town. We were so close. The car behind us suddenly swerved into the left lane. It pulled up alongside my trailer, then alongside my cab. I couldn't see who was driving. The windows were tinted. They stayed parallel to us for what felt like forever. Then, just as we were entering the town limits, they accelerated past us and disappeared down the highway. I watched them go, confused. Why did they just leave? I pulled into the parking lot of the police station and threw the truck in park. My hands were shaking. "We're here," I said. "We're safe. Let's go inside." I looked over at Lisa. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't read, not fear anymore, something else. "Thank you," she said quietly, for picking me up, for believing me. Of course, I said. Let's get you inside. She nodded and opened the passenger door. I grabbed my phone and got out on my side. We met at the front of the truck and I walked with her toward the police station entrance. I was about to open the door when she grabbed my arm. Wait, she said. I turned to look at her. I need to tell you something, she said. Those people in the car, they weren't trying to catch me. What do you mean? She looked me dead in the eyes. They were making sure I got here. Before I could process what she meant, the police station door opened. 2 officers came out, followed by a man and a woman I'd never seen before. The woman smiled at Lisa. There you are. We've been so worried. I looked at Lisa, then back at the woman. One of the officers stepped forward. Sir, we got a call about an hour ago. Lisa here walked away from a care facility. She's got some mental health issues. Her family's been looking for her. No, I said. That's not what happened. She told me. She tells a lot of stories. The woman said, still smiling. The accident, the house in the woods, people chasing her, none of it's real. But her stories can be very convincing. I looked at Lisa. She was staring at the ground now, not saying anything. Is this true? I asked her. She didn't respond. The man, who I assumed was her husband or something, walked over and gently took her arm. Come on, sweetie, let's get you home. Lisa looked up at me one more time. Her eyes were pleading, desperate. Then she let him lead her toward a car parked on the other side of the lot. I stood there completely lost. I don't understand. The car following us. That was us, the woman said. We were trying to catch up to her before she got herself hurt, or got someone else hurt. They all got in the car and drove away, just like that. One of the officers patted me on the shoulder. You did a good thing, son, but next time, maybe don't pick up hitchhikers. He went back inside and I was left standing alone in the parking lot. I got back in my truck and sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The thing is, I can't shake this feeling that something was wrong about the whole situation. The way Lisa looked at me at the end, the way that couple smiled, the way the officers just seemed to accept everything without question. I've thought about it every day since. Was Lisa really mentally ill? Or was her story true, and I just handed her back to the people she was running from? I'll never know the answer, but what I do know is this. I will never ever pick up another hitchhiker as long as I live. And sometimes late at night when I'm driving that same stretch of highway, I look for her. Part of me hopes I never see her again. Part of me hopes I do, so I can know for sure what really happened. But the road is always empty. Well, those were tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and let me know in the comments which one got to you the most. I'll see you soon with more stories.